Okay, so today we're going to talk about assignment 3, as I kind of preluded in the Monday's class, that this one can be a little bit tricky, but we'll go ahead and get you started here, and then you guys can kind of finish out the rest of the assignment. Excuse me. So the way this assignment works is Ford is looking at their car lineup, and their database manager is currently out, and so they've asked you to create a single Python file in order to help them gather some information. Below is what they have as a table coming in. So you should have all the data coming out of this table. And then down below here, you have the actual requirements for the homework assignment. So setting up your homework assignment there in the very beginning, we want to throw in our initial comments. Just grab those real quick. Throw those in at the top. So assignment 3. And then it's usually smart, especially for this one, to strings, there we go, to actually copy and paste these in here. That way you actually make sure that you got every one of them done. So we'll copy and paste those into our sheet here, and we'll need to make sure we put those in block quotes, or line comments rather. And then we can get started from there. So first thing we need to do is have our initial comments. We got that. The second is to create a dictionary for each vehicle that contains the fields and the keys, along with the values listed above. So what does that mean? That means if we come back here and we look at this list up above, we need to create a dictionary for each one of these cars. In other words, every single row that has the keys of the name up above, or the year introduced, or the production of the current model, etc., and then the values that list thereof underneath. So what does that look like? Sure, I'm not missing anybody here. Yep, no, that's good. So like that. And pull this up. All right. So we're going to start with just say car 1, for example. And then we're going to need to create a dictionary. So we do our squiggly bracket, and we're going to start with name, just as it is over here. We want to make sure that we're using these exactly like they are inside of our table over here. So we should have name here, and then we need the value for that name. In this case, it's car. Right? Then we can get the next one out of there. This is going to be something like year introduced. And then we have the production of the current vehicle. Actually, on this year introduced, sorry, you have your other value there, which is 1996. And it's better to make all of these strings. So just make everything a string. And then we have production of the current model. And that one is going to be 2014. We have the generation. That's going to be third. And then last, we have vehicle information. That will be the string here. So you would have something like developed by Ford Brazil as a super mini. Okay. And we end our dictionary, and so we should end up with one long dictionary that goes all the way across here. You can make these a little easier to read if you want to. You can do something like this, where you can put each one of these on their own line. That may be a little beneficial for reading, but you're going to do this for every single one of the cars as you go down. So the easiest way to do that is to take this one. Now that you've copied the model out, do this one. Now you have car 2, and now all you have to do is replace the values going all the way through, right? So the next one would be something like Fiesta. Then we're going to have 1976. Our production model is 2017. This is going to be the 7th generation. And on the vehicle information, this is Ford's long running, the compact line label for. Okay, now notice because Ford actually had a apostrophe in here, we'll want to use double quotes here in order to make sure we're safe. And it would be smart to use double quotes on pretty much everything, then you don't have to worry about that. So if you remember from this week, we've talked about double quotes versus single quotes. That would certainly help on this side. So once we have all that, we have the end of our dictionary, and you would rinse and repeat for the next cars that go all the way down. All right. That will get you these 5 points here. So you need a dictionary for every single one of these cars. And it should be something like car 1, car 2, etc. We're not necessarily using any of the information inside of here. Anybody have any questions on the dictionary part? Sounds simple, but people don't reuse what they're supposed to up here using the titles of those columns. You need to actually use the titles of the columns. Don't shorten it to year intro or something like that. Just type the whole thing in there. All right. So I'll let you finish out the rest of those. If we go down to the next part, it says we will write a function that will take a list of these dictionaries and return a new dictionary with the name value as the key and the dictionary as the value. All right, well, to start here, we need to be able to pass in a list of these cars. So we would do something like cars equals, we take a list and we're going to have car 1 and car 2, and then you would have car 3, etc. as we go out. For this example, I just have the first 2 done. Does everybody see this? We need to set this up first because our function says that we need to pass in a list. So if we have def and then we're creating this function, right? And we're going to call it something like new dictionary, for example. We're going to take in our list. We're going to type in cars here just to make it simple. And then we'll do a colon. And then this function is supposed to take in a list of those dictionaries and return a new dictionary with the name value as the key and the dictionary as the value. So what does that really mean? Well, we need to come in with a new dictionary right off the bat. So if we say something like new dict equals a new dictionary, it's empty, right? Now we're going to loop through each one of the cars inside this list that we brought in. So we would say for car and cars, right? Now car is going to be the dictionary, right? It's whatever car we passed in here. So for that, we need to set this new dictionary key, but we want to specifically set it as the name. So it would be something like new dict, and then we need to grab the key, which we're wanting to grab the name value. So that would be our car, and we want to grab our name. Okay, and that's going to be equal to the entire dictionary. So we just set it equal to car. Once we're done doing that for each one of those cars, we simply return the new dict as a whole. Notice we don't print anything. We don't do anything like that. Notice there's nothing that says print in this function, so don't do any kind of printing. Now, you can do that for troubleshooting purposes. That's perfectly fine. But when you actually send me the code, you should not have any printing going on there. See, I can't wait to learn. Yeah, we'll be getting closer to Excel. All right. So when we get to this section here, if we run this, obviously nothing will happen because we haven't called that function. So let's call that function new dictionary. And we're going to pass in cars. And then we need to actually print this so we can see what comes out. And if we run this, okay, you'll see what we got out of here was this long gibberish thing, but we can tell that there's multiple dictionaries going on. So to make that a little easier to read, just for the purposes of debugging, let's go ahead and import pretty print. Note that you'll want to remove this before you submit the assignment. And we'll do ppprint.pprint. And this will allow us to see that a little easier. Now we can see that we have those dictionaries in there. So we have an outer dictionary, and then we have an inner key here, which is the name of the car. that results in a dictionary that has all that information that we typed in before, right? And we can see that for each one of these cars. So if we had every car put together up here at the top, that is what you would end up doing as you go all the way down. Anybody have any questions on this first dictionary and how we got there? Again, the assignment's asking you to create a function. So we need to have a function. That's this here. We need to be able to pass in this list. Now I'm passing in the same word cars. We could call it cars list here if we wanted to, which means inside of our dictionary or inside of our function, we would need to call this cars list. And we'll do that just to show that you're not using this outer list, that we're passing it into the function, then we're going to loop through it. If you don't get this, now's the time to say something. Because trust me, the rest of the homework will be hard. Because you're passing this cars down here. So we're passing this cars down when we actually call it. It does not need to match the name up here. Great question. Seriously though, if anybody's got questions, if you don't ask right now, it's going to be a struggle for the rest of the homework. All right, so let's take a look at the next function. And that one says, write a function that will go through the newly created dictionary and then return a list of all the car names sorted alphabetically. All right, so we know that we're going to need to create a new function here. So we're going to take out that. And we're going to need to create a new function. So we'll call it def alpha cars, right? We're returning something, or alpha sort. There we go. We need to take in some dictionary here. So we're going to say car dictionary. And from that dictionary, we want to return all the car names sorted alphabetically. So how would we get all the car names out of that dictionary that we had output from before? So here's our dictionary. Where's a good place to pull all the names from? Not the first value, but the first. Because the value in this dictionary is this entire dictionary, right? You're not wrong. It's just what's the other word? Not value, but keys, right? If we pull all the keys out of this dictionary, remember that we set the name for each one of those. So all we need to do is get the keys out of this dictionary, and we should have a list of all the names there. So if we come in and we say something like, should be our car dictionary dot keys, right? That should get us back a list of all those cars. And so if we just print that, just to make sure that we're getting back what we would expect to get back, then down here, we're actually going to call that function. So alpha sort, and we need to pass in that new dictionary. So we're going to do new dictionary because we need to call that function first, right? And for that one, we need to pass in our cars. So notice that we're calling a function inside of a function, because you should be passing whatever the output of this function was into this function. So you would need to call it something like this. Again, we're just using print here to see what we get as an output. So if we print, you'll notice that we get this dict keys, Ka, and Fiesta. All right, so it's like a list of all the cars, but how could we actually get a true list? Does anybody remember how to convert this dict keys over to an actual list? Don't want it as a string, we want to convert it to a list. We're going to convert it to a list. Is there a particular function we should use that would convert it to a list? It's the list function, right? You guys do know the list function. Otherwise, we're going to have a really hard time on the midterm. All right, so if we go list and we pass it into a list, we're going to get a true list back out of this, right? So if we return this, or in this case, we go ahead and print it just to make sure we get back what we're expecting. We get back a list. All right. So now that it's a list, we can actually do things like sort on that list, right? So if we say something like car list equals this list function so that we actually get that back out of there, we can then do car list dot sort, right? Sort is going to go ahead and sort our list that we have over here, and then we can simply return that list. So return car list. Because this original function just said, return me a list of all the car names that are sorted alphabetically. All right, so we return car list, which means when we get this back, we just need to print this. And you can see now they're in alphabetical order as we list them out. All right. Notice we're using a return here, not a print, because this asks us to return it. Notice how it's bold and underlined. We should be returning out of our functions. Down below, we'll actually call those functions to get a print statement. All right, so that gets you the first, basically 11 points out of there. Actually, what, 16 points? Just by getting these two functions. You put every single one of these cars in their own dictionary the proper way, and then you can have that to this point. All right, does anybody have any questions? All right, for that third one, it wants us to write a function that goes through the newly created dictionary. So we need to get the output of this first one here. And we're going to return a dictionary of all the car names and the year introduced. So we specifically want to return a dictionary with the car name as the key and the year introduced as the value. Does anybody have any idea how we would start that one? Well, we got to start with the definition, right? So we're going to have our function. We're going to have something like car year, and we need to pass in that newly created dictionary from up above. So let's just use car dictionary again. Does anybody have an idea of how we would get started on returning a dictionary that has all the car names and the year introduced? Yeah. Yep. So start with a clean dictionary, right? So we can have something like new dict equals an empty dictionary. All right. Yeah. So we could use a for loop to go through that dictionary that we have from up here. That's great. So with that for loop, how would we write that for loop? The idea that he's mentioning here is that we are going to do a for loop through this dictionary. Does anybody remember the best way to do a for loop through a dictionary? On this one, we use dot keys to get the keys back, right? What if we want to return the keys and the values? What do we use? Yeah, we could do that for values, but that would return the values. What would return both of those together? Does anybody remember that method on a dictionary? Items. Yep, plural. So we would go for K comma V, right? Because if you remember, out of items, we get a tuple. So we need to do a multiple assignment where the first one is assigned to K, the second one's assigned to V. We can use key and value if you want, doesn't matter, whatever's easier for you to understand. So if we use key and value in car dictionary dot items, right? So now as we loop through this dictionary up here, The first time it's going to pull the keys, and that is going to be this Fiesta, which is going to be equivalent to our K. And the value is going to be the value of this dictionary going through. So if we want to assign, remember what we're supposed to be returning is the car name as the key, and the value is going to be the year introduced. So if we go back here, we want to set our new dict, and we want to set our name. So we could just use our key, right? Which is going to be key coming in here. And what's that going to be equal to when we go through this? Well, we have value, right? Value is going to be an actual dictionary. So what specifically out of this dictionary do we want to grab? The year introduced, right? So we would go square bracket, year introduced. That will return that value of whatever that is. So if we ask for this, it's going to return, in this case, the key back is car, and the value back is 1996. That's going to add that to the new dictionary, then go to the next car in the list. All right. Once we have that, we just need to return that new dict. And therefore, if we try to test that, we have car year. For that, we need to call our new dictionary. And for that, we need to pass in our cars. Oops. And then we need to pass this whole thing into a print just to see what's going on. And if our function works correctly, we should have a dictionary with the name of the car as the key and the value as the year it was introduced. Everybody see how we got there? So as we went through this, we created a new dictionary. We did our multiple assignments so that when we loop through all of the cars in this dictionary, that we could then assign the key as the name. We're going to set that. And then we had to dig into this because our value is actually a dictionary. We had to dig into that and call specifically for the year introduced so that we return this value. That's what we did here. Then we return the entire dictionary. Yeah, Chase. Chance. Yep, that's the reason I was saying you want to do it specifically. So if we misspell introduce, we're going to get an error saying that there's no key error. Exactly. Yep, when it came back through here, it looked for this year introduced, but because we didn't have it spelled correctly, it's not going to find it. Perfect. Which is why when I test this, if you have year intro as opposed to year introduced like you're supposed to, it won't work. You would probably end up putting this whole thing in a try. And you would have to do a check before that, right? So you would have to say try if value introduced equal, you know what I mean? Exactly. Yep. What's another way that we could do on this one here? We learned it for dictionaries. We could do .get, right? .get would allow us to try to get it. If we don't get it, we could set a value. But that's not going to help us in this case. Question here, do we need to build in error handling into this assignment? There shouldn't be any errors. You're hard coding everything in here with no user input. Yep, exactly. All right, for the next part of the assignment, now that you have your three dictionary or your three functions rather, let's go ahead and remove this print statement. It does want us to build a print statement that shows the results of the function from the step 3, each on their own line, which means this function, we want to take the output of this function and print each car on its own line. Right now, if we just print alpha sort, we're going to pass in our new dictionary function. We pass in cars. If we just print this, we're going to get a list, right? And as I always say, don't just print a list to the screen. We need to actually print each one of these on their own line. So how could we do that? It's not as hard as it sounds. We don't want to use pretty print because pretty print is one for dictionaries, not lists, but two, you're not going to get it printed clean out to the screen. This is going to be end user output. So we need to print it really nice and clean to the screen. And remember, this is a list. So there's something we can do to a list to go through it and then print it out really nice to the screen, each with their own, each car on their own line. Really not as complicated as it sounds. I don't want to use multiple print statements. We're in Python now. You're right, but how could we do that in a Pythonic manner? Exactly. What kind of loop? For loop, right? So anytime we want to print out everything out of a list, it's always best to use a for loop. So we would say something like for car in, and that's our entire list that we're going to get back out. We would say what? Print. What would we print? Really not a trick. Right. When we do that, what are we calling it? Just car. We just print car, all right? Because we specified that name here, for car in this list. So now we just print the word car. All right. I got one too many. Now we have each one of these cars on their own list or on their own line. Okay. That one's pretty easy. That one's not that difficult. Now, this last one is use a print statement to show the results of the function from for, aka car year. And we want to display that in the format of year space colon space name. Note that this is important. It should come out as year space colon space name. Nothing extra, nothing more. Should be exactly like that. And oh, by the way, we want to sort it by the year that's introduced. All right. So you're going to do a bunch of different steps here to get that end result. When you start, let's look at the output of what we got from car year. So let's look at that. Let's do this. Print car year. We're going to pass in our new dictionary. And we're going to pass in our cars. Let's see what we actually get out. You'll notice we get this dictionary out, right? Remember that this is our name of the car, and this is the year of the car that it was introduced. Now, what's the problem with that versus what we asked for in the homework assignment? It's year, then name, right? And it also wants us to sort by year. The problem with that is at this point, like we did up here when we did some sorting, that we can only do that off keys, right? We can only get those values of keys and then sort. If we try to get the values of these and then sort, there's no way for us to use that value and do a lookup in a dictionary, right? We can't look up based on dictionary. We can only look up based on keys. So you're going to have to massage that data a little bit in order to get it into something that you can then pull the keys where they're associated with the year and the car is introduced. You're right. You need to flip the order. This is the one I'll leave you guys to figure out. All right. Don't cheat on this one. If you go out to the internet and you give me some super advanced Python for this one, it's an immediate 0 on the homework assignment. I'm telling you right now. I don't even ask questions. Because the super advanced Python one that's out there on the internet, there is no way you know what the heck is going on. You know why I know that? Because you guys couldn't answer for loops. So if I start seeing advanced Python, something's going to be a little up for everybody in this class. All right. Other than that, you have how much of this homework assignment done? Like 80% of it, right? So just turn in, watch the video, go through each one of those dictionaries. If you add them all in the right way, then all this other information dumps out correct on the screen. If you can't figure out the last one, what do? Just leave it blank. Turn in the homework assignment, right? You'll miss how many points? 5. Would you rather get a 95 on the project or would you rather get a 0 on the project? I know it sounds stupid, but I fail students for this every semester. Not just get a 0 on the assignment, I fail them out of the course and then have to turn them into academic probation. So please don't do that. If you can't figure it out, just do that. Here's the thing though. You want to try to figure it out and not just skip those 5 points. Because if you can't do this, your guys' midterm projects are going to really be tough. All right. Let's see. Can we post the lecture? Yes. I'll post this one and the one from Monday. But if you guys don't understand what I just said here and you need to hear it again, there are 2 videos out here that explain the exact same thing. There's also in the old video section parts that will go through the same thing and walk through assignment 3 again. All right. So if I just didn't explain it in a way that you grasp, go back and watch these videos. Particularly this last question. Again, you want to figure this out because if you can't figure this out, and I'm guessing most of you didn't understand how we got some of this, you want to know how that works because your homework 4 assignment, I don't walk you through that one. And you got to kind of know how this stuff works. And then on top of that, your midterm projects, that's going to be even more difficult. All right. All right, stop the recording.